Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, watching day 2 of President Trump's trip to the Middle East.
فخامة الرئيس Donald J. Trump.
Retired 4-star General Stanley McChrystal on preserving the character of our nation while playing geopolitics.
What gets you applause in the room in the moment can be dangerous because you go around to different audiences and you can get applause lines just by playing to what you think they want to hear.
And speaking of differing opinions, the plane offer heard round the world. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy weighs in on the concerns about a Qatari plane taking off as Air Force One.
If Boeing can't deliver the plane in time, it's Boeing's responsibility to provide him another plane until that one's done.
I agree with that.
And the down-to-the-wire negotiations his former caucus is doing to get a massive tax bill done by Memorial Day.
Waiting to deal with SALT now is a mistake. The majority leader's job is to manage these committees.
Plus, the rest of today's news that got us squawking, from Elon Musk to Newark Airport. It's Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Joe is off today.
Meantime, President Trump now meeting earlier today with Syria's interim president on the sidelines of a meeting in the Middle East. Among leaders, the face-to-face behind closed doors, the first of its kind in 25 years, includes Turkey's president on the phone. Now, a reading from that meeting provided by the White House saying the president urging Syria's president to sign on to the Abraham Accords with Israel and help the U.S. prevent the resurgence of ISIS. Yesterday in Saudi Arabia, Trump said that the U.S. would lift sanctions on Syria. The president is heading to Qatar today, where we're going to be expecting to hear a lot more about investment deals, and I imagine we'll also hear about the airplane, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Yesterday, the White House announcing $600 billion worth of agreements between the U.S. and Saudi, though it's unclear if the actual amount is that high. Among the deals, more than $140 billion in defense sales. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang saying that his company is now going to sell more than 18,000 of his latest AI chips to Saudi Arabia as the Trump White House pulls back on tech restrictions instituted under former President Biden. So that's going to be an interesting development. Part of the issue there was they didn't want certain chips to get into certain countries, in part because they thought that those could get funneled back to other places.
Are they going to sell them the H-20 chips that were destined originally for China, or is this different chips that they're talking about?
That's a good question. I don't know. I believe these are the most advanced chips that they sell, so I assume H-20, if not whatever the next gen will be.
Right. All right, let's talk a little bit more. Speaking of NVIDIA and optimism around those easing chip export rules, that stock of NVIDIA was up more than 5% yesterday. It's up another 1.6% today. Week to date, that's a gain of more than 13%, including this morning's pre-market move. KLA, Lam Research, and Micron are all up by about 13% just in the last 2 days. And AMD has gained 11%, including the move this morning. AMD CEO Lisa Su was one of the executives in Saudi Arabia yesterday who greeted President Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Jensen Huang was there as well. We watched that happening during some of these greetings, but it's been a very good week for the chip stocks.
Very good week for the chip stocks, and really powered by the AI world, Sam Altman and the others.
Sam Altman was there too, right?
As well, you bet. In other corporate news, let's tell you about what's going on here. A potential new package of stock options reportedly on the line for Tesla CEO Elon Musk after the company formed a special committee to consider his pay. The special committee was first mentioned in a Tesla filing last month. The FT now reporting that it's composed only of Chair Robin Denholm and another director, Kathleen Wilson-Thomas. Reports saying the committee will look at alternative ways to compensate Musk for his past work with the company if it can't reinstate his multi-billion-dollar pay package that was struck down in Delaware last year. Now, major Tesla investors are also said to have been consulted about their views on Musk's pay. In a separate Tesla development, the New York Times reporting that Denholm has made close to $200 million selling Tesla stock in the past 6 months amid extreme share price volatility. Those stock sales were carried out under a prearranged plan that was initiated last summer. The question now is, if you're trying to compensate him, sort of back compensate him, but you have to do it in a forward-looking way, what that would look like.
How do you do that? I mean, how do you guarantee that?
Meaning you can't, right, you're not allowed to pay him for what he was supposed to get before. So it has to be sort of prospective, not
on
retrospective.
New gains, but it's really tough to pull new gains off when you look at the
right. And so then
gains
all of
the
a
stock's
sudden, are
already
you just
made.
going to pay him
Straight
extraordinary amounts of stock? Would shareholders go for it in that way?
Could you issue new stock to do it? Does that? I guess it's a question of how much it dilutes the shareholders at that point.
Right.
But look, the shareholders voted to pay him, and we're in favor of that. This stuff being caught up in the Delaware court has really been unusual.
It's not that important in the grand scheme, but the other interesting thing is, he's on every list as, like the third wealthiest person in the world or whatever, first on a given day. And so the question is, if you remove the Tesla stock, he, by the way, will still, because of SpaceX and everything else, probably be in the top 5, if not more anyway. But there's a huge number that's built into that number of Tesla stock that he ostensibly doesn't have.
Yeah. I don't think
question.
He doesn't spend money like that.
I don't think he cares in that regard. But
everybody keeps score.
Everybody's keeping score. Meantime, fintech company Chime filing for an IPO. This is going to take place at the NASDAQ. It's part of that prospectus. The company said it had 8.6 million active members as of the end of March. Now, average revenue per active member was $251. Chime makes money from interchange fees from its debit and credit cards. It also offers high-yield savings accounts, free tax filings, does free payday advances of up to $500. It also allows members to use ATMs from other banks without fees, which effectively does pay for in one way or the other, and it does not charge late fees or compound interest. It is not, though, a bank.
It says that in the statement, but
major consumer banks as its competitors, which has always been one of the complicated parts about the company.
They're saying, look, we're a tech company, not a bank. Right. We're fintech, but we focus on the tech, not the fin. The question is if regulators will continue to treat it as such. But of course, everybody would like to focus on the tech, not the bank part of it, because you get a higher valuation.
And I think the bigger you get, the more you might look like a bank.
Right.
The FAA is set to meet with major airlines today on the recent disruptions at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey. On the agenda, some possible reductions to the roughly 470 daily flights in Newark. The FAA has told airlines they need to proactively cut their schedules as authorities work to overhaul old technology. The airport has suffered a cascade of delays in recent weeks and several air traffic control outages. We talked to Transportation Secretary yesterday, and I think this was in the offing. We knew this was coming. So it wouldn't be surprising if over the next week or two you see a whole raft of new flights that get either effectively removed from the schedule. The question then becomes, which flights do you choose? So the first thing you're going to do if you're United, I imagine, is choose the least profitable flights.
Probably international flights will be the ones they keep because those are the most profitable. I don't know if it will impact United quite as much because United had already voluntarily dropped the number of flights by 35 or more a day that they've been doing. Their complaint has been that some of the other airlines have not kept up. So it's kind of like OPEC, where Saudi Arabia says, okay, we're going to cap it, and everybody else cheats around the edges. This is probably good news for United, I'm guessing, because it will force all the other airlines there to kind of do what United has already done.
But it is true, if the international flights go, the domestic ones become a problem.
And
it's
my guess is you would focus on flights where you're offering multiple flights a day so that it's not as complicated to try and get those people who are booked already on those flights onto other ones and get them there on time. But it's not just the lousy systems for the air traffic control. It's that, by the way, have been decades in the making. It's the shortage of air traffic controllers, especially now that many of them have taken this 45-day leave. And Newark has one airline or one runway that's under construction. So all of this happened at the same time, which is why it's such a massive problem there. But my guess is, I don't know this for sure, my guess is this could be good news for United because they've already taken some of the responsible steps to do this.
We will see.
Yeah.
I've got a couple United flights coming up.
Cross your fingers.
A little personal news you can use.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, as President Trump continues his tour of the Middle East, General Stanley McChrystal, retired commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan, cautions against a partisan perspective.
Maybe we should see the president trying to build strong relationships with countries that matter, build business relationships, which I think globalization is really important. So if it pushes back from that America first idea, I think that's a positive.
What our nation's behavior says about our character and how we can shape it, right after this. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Up and Andrew, Q.
President Trump continuing his swing through the Middle East with a visit to Qatar today, while in Saudi Arabia, the U.S. agreed to economic partnerships that the White House says are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Joining us right now on Middle East relations, so many other things. He's got a new book out. Retired four-star Army General Stanley McChrystal served as commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Is now a CEO of consulting firm McChrystal Group. And as I mentioned, he does have a new book, and it's worth reading. It is called On Character: Choices That Define a Life. And we're going to talk about what On Character is all about. And I want to actually talk about the character of the country right now as well. But I am curious, just when the country sees all of these images of the president in Saudi and all of these CEOs going over there, what are we all thinking about? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we see it through our personal lens and our bias. If you were on the left, you see a bunch of billionaires going over there and they're trying to enrich themselves. If you are on the right, you probably see it a bit differently. If we're in the middle, maybe we should see the president trying to build strong relationships with countries that matter, build business relationships, which I think globalization is really important. So if it pushes back from that America first idea instead into a global economy, I think that's a positive. So that's what I try to see.
Well, I have one related question that, if you listen to the president yesterday, he made a speech which got a lot of applause in the Middle East, where he basically said that, the neocons are over, basically here in the U.S. The idea that the U.S. is going to be exporting effectively our version of democracy is not the game anymore. And that what we need to do is not just accept, but acknowledge that it hasn't worked, and also suggest that everybody has their own sovereignty and should do effectively whatever they want. It was a very interesting thing for a lot of folks I know in Washington, by the way, especially folks in the military sort of complex. What do you think of that?
Well, I got a complicated view of it. First, from my experience in the region, Afghanistan, Iraq, and others, there's only so much you can do. You can't change the direction of a country or reshape its culture, and it's probably not our place to do that. At the same time, I believe that America's greatest strength has always been exporting our values, our democracy, the idea of America. So I don't fully agree with President Trump's, what it sounds like he was saying, but I do understand that we have to respect cultures around the region. But you also have to be careful. What gets you applause in the room in the moment can be dangerous, because you go around in different audiences and you can get applause lines just by playing to what you think they want to hear. That may not be the best thing for the nation.
I have a related national security question, because we had Ted Cruz on the broadcast yesterday, and everybody's talking about this plane that might become the next Air Force One that Qatar may effectively gift the president. Yeah. He said that he was deeply concerned, forget about the optics of it or the ambulance calls or all the other questions, but more about whether, a plane like that could be bugged, whether it creates a national security issue. You raised this issue on the broadcast 2 days ago.
I wouldn't take a phone from the Chinese or a car from the Russians.
So what do you think?
Well, I won't sleep tonight knowing that Ted Cruz is deeply concerned. But I think if Donald Trump, the person, wanted to accept a plane from the Qataris, that's fine. As my president, I'd rather he not do that. I do think it's potentially a national security problem, but I think it's more importantly, it's an optics problem. It is, where does America stand in the world? I just don't think that's something we need to do.
Let's talk about character, and let's talk about this book, and let's talk about this country, and where you think we are as a country when it comes to character, and what you even think character means. I hate to say anymore, because it feels like over the years, at least I've been alive, the idea of character in some way has been debased. And I don't say that as a political statement, just feels like there's something amiss.
I think back to the greatest generation and what they represented, my grandparents, and I kind of see where we are today.
Exactly. I think that character is the essence of us, and it's best reflected in what we do, not what we say, not our brand or what we write or proclaim. It's what our actions are. And if we really step back on an individual level and we look and we say, okay, how do I conduct myself in the little ways and also in the big ways? What is our culture really? And what do our children see? What do our grandchildren see? I've defined character in the book as a mathematical equation, which is amazing since I'm terrible at math, but it's the product of your convictions, your deeply held beliefs, but also your discipline. Because you can have great convictions, but no discipline and not live to them, and they become zero, or vice versa. I think in America, what we've allowed it to do is erode to the point where we don't have standards. We don't demand character. I went to West Point when I was 17, and they had a very strict honor code. And the purpose of the honor code was not to make sure that West Point's an honest place. It's only 4 years. It was designed to mold in the people who went there the habit, the culture of honor that hopefully would carry on through the rest of your lives. To a great degree, I think that works. And I think what we've done in society is we've now normalized or accepted behavior. We accept, and I'm going to knock on politicians, but they're not alone. They will get in front of a camera and they will say something that they know is untrue, and they know we know is untrue.
Right.
And yet we accept it with some strange agreement we have that says, well, because they're politicians. But it's more wide than politicians. And so we are really guilty. All of us. We can't blame this on any single individual. They're symptoms. The cause is at our level. At the
I would say it's a
individual
reflection of us.
That's right.
I mean, it's really a reflection of society.
And
If you see social media and how it plays out, what we cheer for.
Who we vote for, who we put our money to. That's why I'm trying to start a national conversation on character. Now, it's not me starting, and I'm hoping it will start and I can help in a small way. If we all start talking about it and we start deciding what do we really want from each other, you start to hold yourself to a higher standard.
So maybe this is too philosophical of a question.
Yeah.
But when you think about character, one of the things that's happened, I think, in this country is that there was a view that so-called experts comported themselves in a particular way to appear as if they had character, but maybe didn't always. And they would stab you in the back and not in the front.
Yeah.
And that there has been a view that is a disgrace, and that another sort of version of the world, sort of where you stab people in the front and you lie straight up.
Right.
And it's sort of a little bit of a UFC sort of way. No, I think like there's something happening where that is somehow considered more honest, actually. That actually this sort of other approach didn't work. And I, by the way, I wrestle with the whole thing. And so I'm curious sort of where you land on that.
Are either of them worse, or they both suck?
Yeah, well, that's a great point, Quick. I agree with you. And I actually don't have a great answer for that, because we go back to some of the best leaders in American history who had a dark side, whether they owned slaves and protected them or they were philanderers or any number of things. And yet, on the macro sense, they made huge contributions. I still come back to being too open about our lack of character just lowers the standards even more. Right. I think there needs to be some kind of pressure. If you're going to be a scoundrel, at least limit that to what people don't see. That's not a perfect answer, but...
Okay, final question for you, which is you have been talking for years, as long as I have known you, about trying to get a national service program going in this country, which I've always thought is quite brilliant and also something that might help instill some character, or at least get people together to talk and have the conversation that I think you're intending. Where are we on that, and what has held it back this long?
We've had small pockets of it, City or AmeriCorps, people doing great things, but in reality, we've never been able to get out of first or second gear. The Peace Corps is a small size compared to what I think it could and should be. I think
Teach for America, you think?
Yeah, exactly. They're great. Nobody is against it, and that may be part of the problem. Part of the problem may be that there's not an opposition, so there's not a debate. The goal is to make better citizens. The goal is not to have young people pick up trash for a year. The goal is to give everybody a shared experience, so when they get later in life, they've dealt with people from outside their zip code, from outside their social circle, and they've also contributed. They become part owner in America, And you know, if you've ever had to work for something, you treat it differently afterward.
Right.
And so I think that there ought to be civilian national service for every young American, and I think it should be a priority.
You know, it's so interesting. We had Ted Cruz on yesterday talking about this new proposal that he's gotten behind to give a savings account essentially to every American that's born, that they put in $1,000 and you watch it grow over time. And it's been a great idea to let young people see how that would grow. I wonder if you could combine it with something like that to say, okay, we're going to give you this savings account, maybe put some additional money in it through the years, but you have to do this service in order to get it when you turn 18
I like that.
or 25.
I like that little wrinkle to the plan.
It's not just a giveaway. It's we want to invest in you, but we want you to invest in America in return.
I think any version like the GI Bill, where you do something, you don't feel like you got something for nothing afterward.
Right.
And I think it's civilian service is the other side of the same coin. How do you serve the nation?
Right. General, the book is called On Character. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and it's an important and worthy topic that we should all be talking a lot more about.
Thanks for having me.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, the big, beautiful reconciliation bill is still a work in progress in Washington. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy discusses what's on the table, what's causing debate, and where the votes go from here.
His top priorities is what he really campaigned on was no tax on tips.
Right.
That costs money, right? He also brought up SALT. That costs money.
Welcome back. This is Squawk Pod.
And you're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Joe is off today.
We got a big guest here. We can talk about everything. We're going to talk about the latest on the reconciliation bill in Washington, what's going on in the Middle East right now, and so much more. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is at the table sitting in for Joe Kernen today.
I feel good.
Is that what's really going on here?
Yeah, Joe should be worried. I'm here.
Okay, before we hit the reconciliation situation, I'm curious for your reaction to the conversation we were having earlier on the air about the plane and the Air Force One situation.
Now, I don't want you to assume I was watching you because it was early. I was probably taking a shower.
Okay, so the question is, Air Force One lands in Qatar, Qatar, and there's now a question about them gifting the president and the United States, depending on whether it's gifted to the U.S. or to him, this plane. We had Ted Cruz on yesterday. He said this is a terrible idea. He thinks it's a national security threat. We had Stanley McChrystal on earlier. He said that he doesn't like the optics of it. You have some folks putting out memes calling it, Hamas Force One, and other people flying apparently planes over Mar-a-Lago calling it, Qatar Alago or whatever. What do you think?
Well, I think the biggest problem here is we've got a very old Air Force One. In Trump's first administration.
I'd say the practical problem is it would be great to have a plane.
Boeing needs to speed it. Boeing needs to speed this up. And I almost think if Boeing can't deliver the plane in time, it's Boeing's responsibility to provide him another plane until that one's done.
I agree with that.
So the government shouldn't be involved. By the way, it's Boeing's responsibility, and they're getting out of this responsibility. Now, I don't know from a technical point of view. I mean, when you sit back and you think about the pagers in Israel,
right?
Anybody giving or buying any plane, you're going to have to strip it for Air Force One and the things you have to put in it. Is there enough time? The real problem here is Boeing.
Right.
I mean, the president has a legitimate argument. This is an Air Force One that was put during Reagan's time period.
Right.
And the technology and everything else today, they need to solve that problem. They're so far overrun. And if they can't finish the job, they should provide him some loaner plane that has the capability.
That's a really excellent point.
That would solve the whole problem.
But then again, like the loaner plane, the part of the problem is you have to make this secure. And
they should have done it when they were first doing it.
They should have.
They should have been working on that, and they provide something else in the meantime. It's their responsibility. It's just like if somebody was overrunning in a building, you got to provide something else.
But how do you feel about him keeping the plane?
I think the attention now is totally wrong.
What about keeping the plane?
I don't know how he keeps the plane.
Well, the idea is that it's going to be donated to the library, and then
but you just donated it to the government. Now is the government donating it to the library? I'm not a legal counsel, so I don't know how I can predo that.
The sort of structural model is supposed to be that ostensibly they looked at the way Reagan got the plane and somehow was able to. That plane was decommissioned, put inside his library, but on the ground.
Then that's totally fine. No, I'd be totally fine.
But my preference is because it's a relatively new plane. So the reason that plane was put out of commission was it was an older plane. if we're going to get a new plane, and we're also, as taxpayers, going to spend probably $50, $100 million to even retrofit this plane, why waste the money?
Look,
we should have it flying in the air.
I love all these presidential libraries, and I think as we think in the future, when they provide something that they used, when you walk through the Reagan Library and you use that old plane walkthrough and you think about the debates they had in that place, I think that's great for the library. So if there's something that he utilizes and move it onto a library, it's fabulous.
A $400 million plane, though?
Okay, I think we're spending too much time actually on this, and this raises to the actual question that you have. You're going to miss out on all the great things he's doing if you're sitting around debating the plan.
Why don't we talk about the tax plan? Because that's of interest front and center right now.
Yeah, they're marketing it up right now.
That they put out, but will this, A, make it through the House?
Yes.
What will happen in the Senate? Will the changes that are put in the Senate make it through the House the second time?
Okay, first and foremost, this bill will get done. Will it look exactly as it is right now?
That's my assumption, too, that it gets done, but who knows?
But it's not an assumption, okay? From a person that's been in the room all the time and working these bills, it will get done because if they do not do it, they will raise the tax on everybody else. So everybody can hem and haw. But because the margins are so small, everybody's going to want their attention. So structure dictates behavior. They should have had these problems solved before you walk through. I'll give you an example. Dealing with the border is one of the most difficult ones. So when I did H.R. 2, there was a problem that I could have got a bill out of committee, but I wouldn't have got it off the floor, and it would be ugly and everybody worked. So I slowed the committee down, brought everybody in the room for 2 weeks, and worked out all the problems. Right. So once it's out of committee, you take it to the floor and vote on it. Waiting to deal with SALT now is a mistake. And the majority leader's job is to manage these committees. So we missed. Then the speaker is now just talking to him. That's not fair to the chairman of Jason Smith, right? So because 3 or 4 people can stop your whole bill. When you put everybody in the room on both sides, they know they've got to get a bill at the end of the day. And you work those problems out there instead of somebody tweeting something, somebody saying something else to get attention.
Yeah, like yesterday, there was a tweet from one of the Republicans saying, I'm a hell no on the SALT tax stuff that came out of it. So what happens? Because the details really matter.
They will get SALT, but SALT's not going to be wiped away. Now, the problem being is if you wait and you just do a deal with the SALT members, there are a lot of other states that don't have any, that are subsidizing SALT to do it, right? And once you get to a certain point, when you're at 30,000, when you're at 40,000, you're taking care of 90% of the people. And you were at 10,000 before, that's a pretty good get for your constituents.
Well, with the income limits, honestly, there aren't a lot of people who are going to get 30 or 40,000. You don't have $40,000 in state and local taxes from the house that you're living in if you make $200,000.
Yeah.
So,
look, at the end of the day, but if they go to also to married, so you have 400,000. Yeah, then you're in a different place. Well, you double that. You're at
what do you think?
I mean, you're talking about a $1.5 to $1.75 million house to get the paybacks for that. That's even if you're at 400,000. That's
you're gonna take care of, I bet you, about 98%.
Yeah, I'm not arguing taking care of
Yeah.
it. My point is, by the way they've structured it, you're not going to have a lot of people who are taking 40,000 up to the limit of the 30,000.
No, so I don't know what you're overly arguing. I almost think some of these SALT members don't know their numbers.
Right, it's an optical.
They are fighting in their district to show they're fighting.
Exactly,
that's why you should have had the debate inside the room.
Right.
Do you think there's a chance that taxes go up on the wealthiest?
No.
You think that's off the table?
Yeah, Republicans do not raise taxes philosophically. And there is no Democrat that's going to vote for this bill. So you're going to get all the Republicans to vote to raise taxes?
What kind of deficit are we going to be left with when this is over?
You're going to have a big deficit.
And it's going to get worse, not better.
The deficit is the biggest problem we got going.
Right, but this bill is not going to address that ultimately.
No, the debt ceiling is going to provide a greater cut, what we did 2 years ago, than this will ever do. They're talking about a lower number. We did more than $2 trillion. They're arguing about work requirements. We did work requirements in welfare. We did NEPA reform. I mean, and you had all the Democrats voting for it, and you had 2/3 of the Republicans. So I don't know. They're arguing over stuff they've already voted for. They're not going further.
Can you explain my favorite topic, carried interest?
It just got voted down in Ways and Means.
Right. It's not going to be.
No, it's not going to be in the bill.
Why do you think that is?
Because, okay, this is inside baseball.
Give me the inside baseball. Tell us who is effectively influencing this, because it's a very unique...
It's not who.
It's not who?
Everybody on the outside saying, oh, someone bought somebody else. No, you have limits. You can't take corporate money. Okay,
Okay, so what's going on?
When you're writing a bill,
yes,
and you only have like 5 people can destroy everything, you're seeing what can you put together.
Right.
But you're also, when you're doing a bill like this, you're saying a pay for, okay? What does it bring me? Because you need money. Carried interest gets you about $8 billion.
Correct.
Okay?
Right.
So it's not really helping the bill. But to get it, you're going to have 20 or 30 members who are going to go, no, you're going to be in a bigger fight, and you're going to cost you much more.
Why
so
are
it's
they?
not a fight.
But why do those?
Carrying.
You say 20 or 30 say no. Do you think?
Because
this goes back to whether you think somebody's got to them or not.
Okay. See, this is the wrong impression people have.
Okay.
People can have a different philosophical opinion. They could see the benefit that someone took money, and remember, we did something in carry interest in 2017.
Right.
We did we made you hold it longer, right?
And just to be 100% clear, this president is absolutely against carried interest. I just want to put that on the record.
Yeah, he would like to do carried interest.
Right.
He'd like to also the NFL, but when you write a bill, what are your priorities? Okay. Right. His top priorities is what he really campaigned on was no tax on tips.
Right.
That costs money, right? He also brought up SALT. That costs money.
Right, but
okay?
if you could get even $8 billion would help pay some of that down. And if you actually wanted to help the waiters and the waitresses.
If you argued it got you $8 billion and you taxed it, you would never get $8 billion because people just wouldn't use it then. But there's also people who sit back and will be in districts to say, you know what? I couldn't get anybody to invest, but that investment be able to spur and grow something else because you extend it out for 3 years. So they view it as a big benefit. So just because somebody believes that it's benefit doesn't mean somebody paid them any money. That's what people get wrong.
Do they understand how it works or no?
Look, members of Congress know about this much about everything.
No, the reason I ask is I oftentimes feel we have people in Congress come here, and when you explain to them the benefit is not to the investor, it's not the person who actually has the money.
It's the person.
It's the person managing the money.
Yeah.
So we're effectively incentivizing the manager of the money to do their job.
Yeah. But
and we've decided
at the
that
end
that's
of the
a special.
Day, but the member is sitting there and saying, somebody invested in my district that brought me jobs. I don't know who got the greater part of the return on that.
Yeah.
All I know is I didn't get an investment in my district that built that factory that saved that company. That's the job of the member. So they're not sitting back and saying what was fair on the payout. That's not really what's going to drive them. It's whether they have jobs in their district and whether somebody invested in it. And is that wrong? No. And it's wrong for someone to think, oh, well, they're bought off. No, they're not. They're bought off by their constituents that they want to get them jobs. And these are the only people they're paying attention because, you know what? In some of these small districts, no one else pays attention to them. And they're not getting investments.
Thank you. That was actually, I'm very glad that you had that conversation with us just now, because I think it's actually.
I am too. I'm always thankful to be on here and be in Joe's chair.
Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. Thank you for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. You can tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or get the best of our TV show right into your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow, tell a friend to follow too. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.